After the tragic death of Meiqiang's villain, the male and female lead gave a brief introduction. Li Xiaoji is one of the gold medal employees in the villain department of the Time and Space Bureau, and also holds the top spot on the Most Favorite Beauty and Most Disgustable Bitch lists. He is a globally loving and despised existence. And he, who belonged to the group of treacherous officials of the country, often appeared in the ancient fictional world, forcing the protagonist group to have no way out every time. Social context. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, backed by the origin of everything, the source star, responsible for maintaining the order of the world of all sizes, the Space.Time Bureau has almost no rest time. Each taskmaster is fighting hard in their own position, and Li Xiaoji from the evil country and traitor group of the antagonistic department is one of the most hardworking. Li Xiaoji, without a father or mother, without any relatives or connections, was alone. After coming out of the orphanage and struggling in society for many years, she was beaten to death by a falling brick from the sky. After death, he saw the staff from the Space Bureau and was given two choices. One is to bind the system to complete tasks under the arrangement of the Time and Space Bureau, obtain immortality, accumulate enough points, either be promoted and paid, or transfer to another department, or immediately reincarnate. Li Xiaoji chose to bind the system, and the first one bound was the Great Consort System, with ID 020. Later, Li Xiaoji went to different ancient fictional worlds to play the role of a great treacherous minister with different personalities and roles, causing great anger and resentment among people, and was ultimately killed by the protagonist. Li Xiaoji, who loves money all his life, always plays his role perfectly in order to save enough points and live a wealthy life in the game. He completes tasks perfectly and earns all the points for the tasks. But I didn't know that his system was already dissatisfied, secretly plotting to betray him. Urgent notice on January 26, 2024. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, I am feeling unwell and currently hospitalized for recuperation. I cannot guarantee updates and can only wait for my physical condition to stabilize before resuming updates. I apologize to all my book friends and sincerely apologize. Chapter 1. Servile and Servile Li Xiaolang, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, poo. How could this beast still have the face to appear? How shameful. The Li family is full of loyal and martyrs, why did such a thing happen? I don't blame the Li Tian family for not recognizing him, even if it were me. The noisy surroundings made Li Xiaoji, who had just finished receiving the plot, slowly open his eyes and see the environment he was in. He was only one step away, but it seemed like a wooden door across thousands of mountains and rivers, and couldn't help but let out a sigh. Li Xiaoji is an employee of the Time and Space Bureau's antagonistic department responsible for maintaining world order of all sizes. He belongs to the evil country and traitor group and is one of the gold medal employees. Professional portrayal of villains who have been defeated by the main characters, often with the same name and surname, is also for the convenience of assigning tasks to the Bureau. The reason why there is a need for employees from the villainous department to replace villainous figures is because some small worlds unexpectedly create loopholes during their evolution towards the larger world, leading to the awakening of a group of villains. The awakened villains either end up together with the protagonist group, completely disrupting the order of the small world, or they leave without playing. In order to streamline the storyline and bring the plot to the end, in order to achieve the upgrade from small world to large world, the small world that cannot grasp the most crucial link. The villain has chosen to seek help from the Time and Space Bureau. This time is no exception. In this small world with an ancient fictional background, the main plot was originally about the story of Li's country being stolen by traitors. The male and female protagonists endured for many years, planned for a long time, and were able to restore the country. But the emergence of loopholes led to the awakening of the biggest villain, who decisively killed the male and female leads, strangled the traitors, and directly ascended to the throne, causing chaos in the world. The little world Heavenly Tao was startled and woke up. He immediately reversed time, grabbed his original soul, and sent him to the reincarnation pool for trial. The body shell left behind by the original body is handed over to the taskmaster assigned by the Time and Space Bureau. The demand of the Heavenly Tao is for the taskmaster to do the corresponding work well and make the storyline complete. Li Xiaoji arrived neither early nor late, at a crucial juncture in the plot. Not long ago, the original body was buried at a hidden stake in the imperial city by the male and female leaders, and some hard bones were cruelly killed. The person sent by the male and female leaders to assassinate the original body had already laid an ambush on the necessary route for him to return to the mansion. At this moment, Ginchen was visiting his mother and younger sister with a group of followers, but his mother was blocking the door tightly because at the moment he betrayed his dignity to please the traitors, his mother severed ties with him. The original body, whose hands were stained with blood, never regretted his actions and also attempted to sever ties with his biological mother. But ultimately, it was difficult to let go of family ties, and a person without weaknesses was not enough to reassure the one on the dragon chair. Therefore, he took the opportunity to turn his mother and younger sister into his weaknesses in order to gain more trust. After regaining consciousness and taking a deep breath, Li Xiaoji took a step back, knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times before loudly saying, "Mother, my son will come to see you again next month. Please take care of your health and take care of yourself and your little sister." Before the words could be finished, a sob came from the door, and soon the timid voice of the little girl rang out again, "Brother. Don't call him, you don't have a brother, remember." The sound of "brother" clearly angered the woman in the door, making her scream fiercely and scared the little girl to tears. Listening to the crying, Li Xiaoji's face showed heartache. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but couldn't say it. She had to get up and ordered her left and right to put the silver coins and medicinal herbs at the door, turning around to leave. Seeing him about to leave, the neighbors who were hiding at their doorstep and talking shut up, closing the doors and windows to avoid getting caught up in the bad luck he brought. Li Xiaoji turned a blind eye to this. Every time Ginchen came to see his mother and sister, he was always talked about by the people here, and no one liked him. Although he didn't care, he also had a murderous heart. Just hindering my mother and sister, I didn't want to scare them. This killing intent was tightly controlled by my original body and never erupted. After only taking 2 steps, the sound of opening the door rang from behind. Li Xiaoji timely put on an extremely surprised look and turned around excitedly, "Mom." But when he saw the woman with white hair all over her head, he smiled and looked down. He then looked up at the plaque that the woman was holding in her hand, feeling extremely helpless. However, the panic in Li Xiaoji's eyes was fleeting, replaced by an unconscious straight back and an expression of no respect. All because he knew that Li Tian's disturbance was to seek justice for the deceased soul who had died in the hands of the original body a few days ago, so he perfectly portrayed the reaction that the original body should have. Even though Li Tian, who was about 35 years old, turned white and exhausted from various changes, her eyes remained sharp. She frowned and kicked away the silver coins and medicinal herbs brought by Li Xiaoji. "Get out, bring your things and get out of here for me. Even if I eat dog poop and pig food, I won't eat any of what you, this beast, bring," shouted angrily, "Mother." Li Xiaoji was somewhat helpless by Li Tian's attitude, and even more angry at her for not knowing what to do. She couldn't help but shout at her. Li Tian stood up straight without even looking at Li Xiaoji and shouted, "I'm not your mother. My son has died a long time ago. I personally dug his tomb and erected a monument for him. It's hard to say which milk doll running on the street is my son's reincarnation. Why bother Mr. Li, who is high and mighty, to bear this name? If Mr. Li really admits that he is addicted to his father and wants to kowtow and sell well to everyone, why not kowtow to the plaque in front of everyone and apologize to those wronged souls who died in vain?" During the conversation, Li Xiaolang, who had been crying with her face covered, ran out and stood next to Li Tian, who held up the plaque of her deceased husband. She was worried about her situation and wanted to express her feelings for her brother. Zhaozuiyuan.com. Stimulated by Li Tian's words, Li Xiaoji clenched her fist and tried to restrain her anger, saying word by word, "Mother, do you really want to force her son like this? You clearly know that your son is doing this just to keep our family alive. The state of Li has fallen, and the state of Yi is in full swing. Loyalty to serve the king is the duty of our people in Yi." Pa! Li Tian's anger instantly surged upon hearing such words that pigs and dogs were inferior. He held the plaque in one hand and slapped Li Xiaoji hard, causing his followers to forget to breathe. To survive, one must eat one's own conscience and indiscriminately kill innocent people. There are so many people who want to live, but who can forget their ancestors like you? Li Tian's words made Li Xiaoji's eyes turn hard, slowly turning back. However, Li Tianchi raised the plaque again, which meant something self-evident. Perhaps the murderous aura emanating from Li Xiaoji's body made the surrounding neighbors feel uneasy. When they opened the door and window again, they saw Li Xiaoji's sword suddenly unsheathed, with its tip pointing straight at Li Tian, who was holding his head high. "Stop!" Neighbors nearby were so shocked that they reached out one after another, trying to stop this heinous act of matricide, but were fixed in place by Li Tian's gaze. Li Tian looked at the tip of the sword that was almost piercing her neck, her eyes turned red, and the hand holding the plaque tightly grasped it. However, with a mocking smile on her face, she said, "If a commoner woman lives a lowly life, why not die? Lord Li should have done this long ago. For the sake of luxury and food, for the sake of a high bed and soft pillow, Lord Li would not hesitate to flatter his enemies who killed his father and exterminated his family. Now it's better to offer the head of a commoner woman as a token of loyalty." After speaking, Li Tian closed her eyes and asked Li Xiaoji to act quickly. Li Xiaoji's chest was blocked, and he clenched his sword handle. His face became increasingly ugly, and his breath gradually lost control, as if he could stab him in the next moment. "Mom, don't force me." Chapter 2. Servile and Servile. Li Xiaolang, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Li Xiaolang was already frightened by this sudden change, her face turned white, her body didn't respond, and she could only freeze in place, tears falling one by one. After a while, Li Xiaolang regained some strength and without thinking, rushed to Li Xiaoji's feet, crying and pleading, "Brother, don't kill your mother, brother, don't kill your mother." The crying of the little girl made Li Xiaoji's attendants, who were also stunned, come to their senses and quickly come forward to dissuade them. If they don't stop at this moment, there should be a contingency. If adults regret it, it will only be them who will die. The bolder neighbors around coincidentally approached and surrounded Li Tian and Li Xiaoji with 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside, persuading each other one by one. The shining blade of the sword was right in front of me, saying that it was not afraid of being fake, but all the loyal and martyrs of the Li family died in the war for the country. They remembered their kindness and naturally wanted to protect the last pride of the Li family. We must not let Li Xiaoji, this brute, harm the Li Tian family, let alone let Li Xiaolang lose her mother too early. If her mother is gone, isn't the little girl going to fall into Li Xiaoji's hands and be taught bad by the brute? Please calm down, adults, calm down, they are all small people. They don't know how to handle things and have angered the old lady. If you want to fight or scold, just aim for the small ones and don't hurt your feelings with me. A very clever-looking servant suddenly slapped himself, knelt on the ground, and took the initiative to blame himself. Most of the medicinal herbs he brought today were taken by him to pick, and even if he pulled them hard, he would have to pull them onto him. With the steps down, Li Xiaoji did not take advantage of the situation and stared intently at Li Tian for a while. Seeing her tightly closed her eyes and half step back, she suddenly became angry and embarrassed. She swung her sword fiercely, shattering the tablet she was holding. Li Xiaolang was so shocked that she opened her eyes, and everyone also exclaimed in surprise. This undoubtedly shattered her biological father's bones and ashes. Is Li Xiaoji really devoid of any human nature? You. Li Xiaolang had a hint of luck in her heart, hoping that her son could get lost and not flatter that traitor again, and not engage in indiscriminate killings. However, she did not expect him to end up being a troublemaker here. Li Xiaoji no longer glanced at Li Xiaolang and paid no attention to the scattered plaques on the ground. He sheathed his sword, gave a kick to the kneeling follower, and turned around to leave. The attendant immediately slapped himself several times, saying that he was not right and making sure that Li Xiaoji heard the sound. Li Xiaoji allowed him to slap himself and continue moving forward. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the alley, with some distance left. After getting into the carriage, Li Xiaoji supported her head with one hand and ordered her to return to the mansion. With the help of her companions, the servant who had fanned herself into a big pig's head quickened his pace and followed the carriage, afraid of being left behind. Until the carriage moved away, everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Li Xiaolang, who was shocked, and Li Xiaolang, whose eyes were swollen from crying. They then looked at the sawdust on the ground and sighed again. Now, there was no more love between the mother and son, and if that beast wanted to do something, the Li Xiaolang mother and daughter were powerless to resist. An aunt who had a good relationship with the Li Xiaolang family let out a sigh and said, "Sister, as the saying goes, a hero doesn't suffer immediate losses." But seeing tears streaming down Li Xiaolang's 2 lines, he asked his aunt to shut her mouth wisely. At least it was a pregnancy in October, and the bone and blood that was fought to the death. To this extent, how could a mother's heart not hurt? Alas, the young man from the Li family used to be so sensible and filial, how could he become like this in just a few years? Casually wiping her tears, Li Xiaolang gradually gathered the shattered tablet into her arms, thanked everyone for their help, and took Li Xiaolang home. The scattered silver coins and medicinal herbs on the ground were ignored. Everyone also doesn't want to touch these things, even the person who likes to take advantage of them the most in daily life won't touch them. They find them dirty. The carriage drove smoothly on the wide street, and the emblem on the carriage made passers-by unable to resist spitting, wishing to greet them with rotten vegetable leaves and rotten eggs. After Li was stolen by Igua, in order to survive, the common people mostly endured, and there were also those who could serve the Igua court. But like his original self, he is the only one who indulges in the blood of innocent people to please the traitors, and does not blame others for hating him. And after he was a loyal martyr, his father Li died from exhaustion during the last moment of the national war. How tragic and loyal was he! He was born with such a servile attitude, as if he had taken his father's behavior as a joke. Every time we travel, it's a start that many people dislike, there's really no novelty at all. Li Xiaoji felt the resentment that came straight at him and said humorously. The villain with the code 020, who is nestled in Li Xiaoji's sea of consciousness, is not disliked by everyone. Do you think you can make an exception? Li Xiaoji raised her eyebrows and reached out to grab at the void. A mirror appeared in her hand, asking her to carefully look at her face. Why can't she be an exception with such a beautiful appearance? Although my original face is not 1,000th of mine, it is enough to captivate all beings. Ah, I can't say I can still use this to separate the male and female protagonists, hee. The great treacherous minister's system rolled its eyes and its messy nest returned to the sea of consciousness, lazy to pay attention to this narcissistic maniac. But the carriage stopped at this time, and the fight began. Li Xiaoji asked him to throw the mirror into the system space, and hold the sword handle tightly. He did not forget to roast, the man and the woman can't stop talking about it, they can talk about it. The big traitor system nodded, who said it wasn't. With one hand lifting the door curtain, Li Xiaoji finally poked his head out and saw a sharp arrow heading straight towards his face. However, he remained calm, blocking it with a horizontal sword and flying the arrow away. At the next moment, Li Xiaoji skillfully climbed onto the roof of the carriage, pulled out the scabbard of his sword, and grabbed a beautiful sword flower from the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, knocking down the arrows that rushed towards him one by one. It was the evening, and every household was busy cooking and lighting a fire at home. There were few pedestrians on the road, and although the ambush areas for assassins were remote, they were the only way for Li Xiaoji to return to his residence. Li Xiaoji quickly swept around, and there were about 8 assassins. 4 were responsible for hiding and shooting arrows, and 4 were responsible for wielding knives to charge. Judging from their posture, they wanted to win with speed. On Li Xiaoji's side, there were more than 10 people including the coachman and attendants, including about 5 of them with strong skills. They were all guards sent by the emperor to protect and monitor the situation. Due to the delicate relationship between the emperor and his original body, Li Xiaoji did not expect to rely solely on these guards, so he commanded his followers to form an array to resist the enemy. The timely action of the master reduces the pressure on the followers, obeys the command, constantly changes the formation, and pushes outward, ready to counter the actions of the assassins at any time. The servant who fanned himself into a pig's head was the most ruthless in his actions, and he couldn't even see his humble demeanor just now. The 5 guards consciously approached Li Xiaoji, as they were responsible for his safety. Watching the changes in the situation and the assassin's increasingly difficult performance, Li Xiaoji clenched the sword handle and issued an order in a timely manner: grab your life. With a single command, the movements of the accompanying personnel are greatly restricted, making it easier to kill than to catch them alive. The assassins saw the situation was not good, but they didn't like to fight. They made a gesture at the beginning, and this small group of assassins scattered and fled, hiding in various paths. Upon seeing this, Li Xiaoji ordered his subordinates to be divided into 4 groups, with the first 3 groups trying to catch as many as possible alive, while the remaining ones were responsible for guarding his safety and being careful not to let the enemy distract him from the mountains. At this moment, a sharp arrow suddenly flew from the sloping roof on the right side and shot straight at Li Xiaoji's heart with rapid force. It turned out that the 9th assassin was still hidden. Chapter 3. Servile and Servile Li Xiaolang, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the treacherous minister system suddenly emerged, with a rare excitement on his face. Are you going to overturn? But Li Xiaoji tightened his back and with a backhand sword, he forcefully pushed the lightning-fast arrow away, causing it to penetrate the wall without diminishing its momentum. Then, Li Xiaoji turned around and met the gaze of the archer hidden in the right rear. It was regrettable that the archer missed the shot, but he didn't hesitate and ran away. How could Li Xiaoji allow the other party to say and leave at will? If I guess correctly, this archer will be an indispensable general for the male lead in the future. The original body had just dampened the male protagonist's morale, and if he were to cut off the male protagonist's arm, it would surely make him hate him to the bone. The treacherous minister system sensed Li Xiaoji's thoughts and couldn't help but remind him, "You little boy, take it easy and don't step on the task again." Li Xiaoji pretended not to hear, chuckled lightly, and his anger sank into the dantian. He exerted his legs and stepped on the roof of the carriage to use his lightness skills to fly directly to the roof. He then wielded his sword and stabbed it, taking the archer's back shoulder. The archer, who was running forward, quickly turned around and drew his sword to block it. In a hurry to escape, he adopted a wide-open and close sword technique, attempting to force Li Xiaoji back. However, he saw Li Xiaoji's sword walking with a dragon, which allowed Xiao Jing to resolve his move. Without waiting for the archer to come up with a solution, Li Xiaoji suddenly withdrew his sword, using his left foot as the fulcrum and his right foot to kick fiercely and fiercely, causing the opponent to fly backwards. When he got up again, he was punched by Li Xiaoji. The archer was knocked unconscious and had to resist, but when Li Xiaoji punched hard, he could only helplessly faint. Later, Li Xiaoji kicked the archer to the ground with one kick, while she flew lightly to the ground like a swallow. In the recent fight, the remaining guards and attendants were unable to intervene, and now they were clever enough to tie up the living body. Not long after, the people who went to pursue the assassin returned empty-handed without exception. Li Xiaoji coldly glanced at them and only said to follow the rules of the mansion after returning. Li Xiaoji returned to the carriage once again, and the group adjusted and rushed towards the Li mansion. In the blink of an eye, the cold and spacious alleyway returned to calm, as if nothing had happened. It was a long time before residents came out to investigate. Returning to the mansion, a group of people waited for those who were punished to receive their punishment, and those who were imprisoned in the dungeon were imprisoned. Li Xiaoji then bathed and changed clothes, preparing to have dinner before meeting the living person. But just as Li Xiaoji got up to dress, he suddenly felt an itch in his throat. The next second, a mouthful of black blood spat out, making the servant who served him dress pale with fear. Li Xiaoji casually wiped the corners of his mouth, gesturing for the servant to bring someone in to clean up, while he took out a small black pill from his pocket and took it. This time, it was bestowed by the emperor, and it was common for traitors to be suspicious. Even if their original selves showed enough loyalty, they still could not reassure the other party. Only by constantly mastering the life of the original body can the one on the dragon chair be reassured. The poison in the original body is a trouble, and you have only been able to cultivate your divine soul well. You don't need to exchange points for some spiritual medicine to avoid suffering. The great treacherous minister suggested, feeling Li Xiaoji's rapid breathing in the system. Erden, how many times have I taught you? If you can get through it on your own, don't spend points. Once you spend them, it's easy to develop a habit. In that case, you won't be able to save points. Li Xiaoji adjusted her breathing, calmed down, and then said to the great consort system with a disapproving expression. If you're so stingy, just speak frankly. There's no need for a lengthy argument. Also, don't call me a jerk, be careful not to get into a fight with you, said the treacherous minister systematically. Li Xiaoji raised her eyebrows and chuckled lightly, ah, you're angry. Okay, I know you care about me, but I really don't need any miracle medicine. The treacherous minister's system is blocked in the chest. Alright, let's just endure it, let's see how long it can last. After taking medicine and having dinner, Li Xiaoji went to the dungeon. As an ancient villain, although the Sparrow's small and well-equipped dungeon is considered a standard accessory in the mansion, its original form is particularly outstanding. At least when Li Xiaoji stepped into the bloody dungeon, he opened his eyes directly. TSK, it seems that a more tragic death must be arranged this time to justify the numerous crimes committed by this identity. Looking back at the plot related to the original character, Li Xiaoji nodded with a rare and heavy nod. The treacherous minister system exclaimed somewhat unexpectedly, don't whiten. Cut, I don't know who said there can be an exception based on the original appearance. I don't know who said it, Li Xiaoji said solemnly. In the end, he earnestly educated the system of great traitors. Erden, your ideas are not correct. The villain cannot be washed away, and it is the fate of a wicked person who has done all the bad things. Under the eyes of the treacherous minister system, Li Xiaoji arrived at the prison where the archer was being held. Without Li Xiaoji's command, the servants dared not torture the living without authorization. Therefore, the archer woke up in good spirits. But at the moment when Zheng Mengmeng realized he had become fish on the chopping board, he twisted his limbs and attempted to commit suicide, but was powerless. His hands and feet were bound by iron chains, hanging on the wall with his mouth blocked. He could only endure and look for another opportunity. When Li Xiaoji, dressed in green clothes and wearing a jade belt around his waist, sat in front of Zheng Meng had already adjusted his state, his eyes contemptuous, and he looked as if he had set aside life and death. Li Xiaoji smiled slightly and ordered someone to arrange the newly acquired items in the mansion. Zheng Meng looked at the various torture tools placed in front of him and smiled at the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, which was not uncommon. The thief only used this little trick. But what Li Xiaoji said next made Jing Meng's face change. Although the new thing is good, it's not interesting to use it. The last person who died here only lasted for 3 days. It's really disappointing. Last one. Jing Meng opened his eyes wide and realized who Li Xiaoji was talking about. He struggled fiercely, this beast is not as good as anything else. TSK, you are indeed a group. Li Xiaoji watched Jing Meng's reaction and clapped his hands. Jing Meng's body stiffened and he secretly spoke ill. His emotions were too exposed, and he directly asked Li Xiaoji to associate him with the hidden pile that was recently removed. But as long as he doesn't say anything, Li Xiaoji has no further clues, so it won't ruin the plans of others. Let him loosen his bones first. Li Xiaoji, who had achieved the desired effect, didn't bother talking to Jing Meng anymore. He gave a glance to the subordinate standing on the right side, and the small subordinate immediately approached to greet Jing Meng. Jing Meng originally intended to bravely resist all the torture, at least not to embarrass himself in front of the thieves, to regain some momentum, and die with dignity. But the intense pain still made his unconscious face look grim, and sweat and tears mixed together, blurring his vision. Li Xiaoji admired Jing Mengwan's desperate and futile thrusting like a dehydrated fish, and breathed a sigh of joy. If the bone is hard, just loosen it up. Once it's loose, let's get back to business. My subordinates understood and continued to torture Jing Meng. This torture lasted for about half an hour, and by the time Li Xiaoji ordered his subordinates to stop, Jing Meng had already lost consciousness, with only an uncompromising arrogance remaining between his eyebrows and eyes. Are you dizzy? Then wake up the person. Li Xiaoji leaned forward and carefully glanced at Jing Meng, giving a light command. Chapter 4. Servile and Servile Li Xiaolang, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, a basin of ice water poured down, and Jing Meng woke up suddenly. The strong stimulation made him uncontrollably shout, but his mouth was tightly blocked and he couldn't utter it. Finally regaining his composure, Jing Meng stared at Li Xiaoji intently, knowing that he was in danger and fearless of death. He wished he could personally kill this traitor and avenge his deceased brothers. Li Xiaoji had seen the gruesome gaze of Jing Meng in many people before and didn't take it seriously. He waved his hand and gestured to step back left and right. There were only Li Xiaoji and Jing Meng left in the prison cell. Li Xiaoji, who had been sitting for a long time, slowly got up and walked to Jing Meng, who was weak in strength. He casually pulled out the rag blocking his mouth. Jing Meng involuntarily took a deep breath, and at the moment when his breathing was smooth, the pain seemed to subside and his mind became somewhat clear. The Jing family in southwest China has been a legendary arrow for generations, with the tip of the arrow pointing towards them. They can kill foreign enemies from the top and defeat rebels from the bottom. I never imagined that one day, they would be as humble as me and have this honor. Li Xiaoji looked at Jing Meng with a determined gaze, picked up the dagger placed aside, and chuckled lightly. Jing Meng's eyes widened, and the panic of his identity being exposed made him feel a bit at a loss, but he quickly calmed down. How about recognizing him as a descendant of the Jing family? In the end, what Li Xiaoji will only receive is his body, never wanting to harm the foundation of the Jing family. After thinking about it, Jing Meng relaxed for a while, looked up with difficulty, and stared at Li Xiaoji, who was struggling slightly. I think General Li of Weiyuan back then, with his self-developed Li's fist technique, punched foreign enemies and kicked treacherous officials, how magnificent it was. Unexpectedly, such a character ended up with no bones left and no future to see him off. Even if there were descendants, if they were to compromise and accept the thief as their father, it would be better to die and have a happy ending. Li Xiaoji's eyes changed, and if there was a hint of murderous intent overflowing, Jing Meng felt it, but was a bit excited. Just as he was about to burst out laughing, he coughed. Jing Meng had to suppress his discomfort and cough while laughing, how could you be angry about such words? Do you still remember what your surname is? The murderous aura disappeared instantly, and Li Xiaoji relaxed his expression. He sat back in his original position and glanced up and down at Zheng Meng, saying, the debate over words is ultimately pointless. I just want to see how valuable the descendants of the Zheng family really are. Zheng Meng's smile narrowed and he said on guard, what are you doing? The answer to Zheng Meng was a scorching red soldering iron, a flashing white blade, and a scream instantly echoed throughout the dungeon, causing people to shrink their necks. The adults' actions were becoming increasingly brutal. Until the screams disappeared and Li Xiaoji, who had a slightly pale complexion, slowly appeared in front of everyone, ordering his subordinates to hang the blood and flesh-blurred Zheng Meng to the north gate, waiting for a rabbit. If someone comes to save him, he will do his best to keep him. If no one pays attention, let Zheng Meng drain the last drop of blood and throw him to the mass grave. Seeing Li Xiaoji's token, although the guard of the north gate was impatient, he also cooperated with the actions of the Li Mansion guards and hung Zheng Meng up. Zheng Meng, who was awakened by the pain caused by his injury, slowly opened his eyes and understood Li Xiaoji's purpose in an instant after understanding his own situation. He couldn't help but become anxious. I only hope that others can calm down and never come to save him. Don't ruin the entire plan for him alone and fulfill the plan of the dog thief. Suddenly, a scene before falling into a coma flashed into his mind, causing him to show doubts. If I remember correctly, while torturing him, Li Xiaoji inexplicably spat out a mouthful of black blood. Did you get poisoned? If it's true, it's best to poison that thief. Thinking about it, Zheng Meng unconsciously raised the corner of his mouth, but was immediately replaced by worry. He thought to himself, don't be fooled, brothers. Li Mansion, the great treacherous minister who witnessed Li Xiaoji's brutal behavior throughout the entire process, blinked his eyes. Oh no, he didn't follow the routine, and Zheng Meng was tormented to the point of being left with nothing but a breath. Now, the hatred value of the protagonist group has been filled up, so how is Li Xiaoji going to die? Li Xiaoji, who had to suppress the toxic attacks during the torture, raised her eyebrows and took a pill, not in a hurry, everything was under control. Outside the imperial city, in a certain farm, the escaped assassins were now dressed as farmers, looking exhausted and haggard, with no trace of the ferocity of assassinating Li Xiaoji. Where is Zheng Meng? Qin Shi, dressed in black and with a picturesque expression, searched for a while but did not find Zheng Meng's figure, feeling a sense of foreboding in his heart. Everyone, look at me. I looked at him and didn't dare to answer. In the end, I pushed out a person who spoke fluently to explain. Zheng Meng was caught by Li Xiaoji's people. After listening, Qin Shi clenched his fist. Damn it, Li Xiaoji first killed Ah Wu and the others, and then captured Zheng Meng alive. He was so arrogant that he really thought no one could help him. Taking a deep breath and scanning the reactions of the brothers, Qin Shi made a decision and said, we must rescue Zheng Meng. Standing by Qin Shi's side, Lu Yuaning, dressed up as a man with handsome eyebrows and eyes, took a deep breath and whispered, calm down, if you can't bear it, you'll mess with big plans. After the failure of the assassination attempt on Li Xiaoji, the imperial city immediately went under martial law, with soldiers patrolling everywhere on the streets and guards at each city gate doubling compared to usual. If they act recklessly and reveal even more flaws, they may give the thief on the dragon chair a chance to catch them. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Qin Shi naturally understood this truth, but could he just watch another brother die at the hands of Li Xiaoji? Qin Shi and Lu Yuaning are the male and female protagonists of the little world. Qin Shi is the legitimate bloodline of the Li royal family, while Lu Yuaning is his childhood sweetheart's fiancé A.E. After the state of Li was invaded by the traitor Xin Yu and his foreign enemies, the injuries and deaths of loyal officials and generals of the royal family scattered throughout the country. After struggling for 8 years, Qin Shi gathered a force in his hands and gradually infiltrated the imperial city. Given time, Qin Shi and others will surely be able to reclaim the territory of Li from Shen Yu's hands, and the Igua created by Shen Yu will also become nothing. But at this moment, the timing is not yet ripe, and Qin Shi's birth mother, the Empress of Li, is still under the control of traitors. If she acts rashly, it is highly likely that all her previous achievements will be lost. Even Lu Yuaning was equally concerned about Zheng Meng's situation and wished to save him immediately. She had to control her emotions and consider the long-term. But as everyone knows, the so-called long-term plan is to give up on Zheng Meng. After all, the risk of saving him is too great, and they cannot be arbitrary. Qin Shi struggled for a while, but couldn't help but punch the wall. If I had known this, I should have tied Zheng Meng up. This assassination was just to interfere with the sight of Li Xiaoji, the thief, but Zheng Meng insisted on following. Lu Yuaning sighed lightly, unable to conceal her sadness between her eyebrows and eyes, and said, Zheng Meng also wants to avenge Ah Wu. When it comes to Ah Wu, Qin Shi stopped talking. Ah Wu was a guard sent to him by his father, and they grew up together since childhood. Zheng Meng and Ah Wu were also martial brothers, and their relationship naturally deepened. But a while ago, when Ah Wu entered the city and met with the hidden stakes inside, he was caught by his prepared original body and tortured to death. How could such blood feud not be avenged? Qin Shi and others could temporarily endure their hatred for the sake of the overall situation, but Zheng Meng could not bear it. Chapter 5. Servile and Servile Li Xiaolang, 5. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. When they devised a plan to assassinate the original body in order to confuse their vision and clear the remaining traces of Ah Wu and others, Zheng Meng made up his mind. I only lament that the wicked have a long life, and even Zheng Meng, who is as skilled in archery, has not been able to harm Li Xiaoji at all, and has become a prisoner. Amidst the tense atmosphere, someone suddenly reported that Zheng Meng was hanging from the north gate and the situation was very bad. Upon hearing this, Qin Shi and Lu Yuaning took 2 steps forward at the same time, glanced at each other, and Lu Yuaning clenched her fists, shook her head gently, and whispered, Alung, you can't. Qin Shi frowned, so he could only do nothing and swallow his anger as he watched his brother tragically die. Unwilling, too unwilling. Feeling Qin Shi's emotional changes, Lu Yuaning understood the struggle in his heart, but she had to apologize for it and remind him again. Don't forget our current situation. If you pull a hair and move your whole body, will you lose everything or laugh until the end? It all depends on your thoughts. Qin Shi fell silent, and his silence affected those present. Everyone hates and is angry, but they are powerless and have to secretly swear that on the day of the restoration of the country, Li Xiaoji's head will be used to pay tribute to his deceased brothers. But no one had ever thought of starting from Li Tian and Li Xiaomo. Li Xiaoji was not something, but the uncompromising Li Tian was still admirable. Moreover, General Li or General has been a country throughout his life, and they cannot disrespect General Li or General's widow, even if they hate Li Xiaoji no matter how much. This is also the reason why I feel at ease and show my concern for my mother and younger sister in front of others, occasionally escalating disputes with my mother. People like Qin Shi would not and could not take action against the deeply righteous Li Tian family. Like Shen Yu and others, they can only control their original bodies by grasping the fate of the Li Tian mother and daughter. Ache. Li Xiaoji sneezed and rubbed his nose. Which bastard scolded him? In the imperial palace, the sleeping halls of emperors throughout history, Shen Yu, wearing embroidered dragon-patterned cloud-like sleeping clothes, with cold eyebrows and eyes, was leisurely writing with a smile on his face. Li Xiaoji's every move was under his control, so he almost immediately received the news that Li Xiaoji had been assassinated, and he had caught a living person and hung him at the city gate. Such incidents have occurred frequently in the past year, and there is nothing unusual about them. However, the joy of Li Xiaoji being rejected by the Li Tian family once again aroused his interest. Did he really smash his deceased father's memorial tablet with one sword in front of his own mother? Shen Yu said, looking at the Grand Eunuch kneeling beside him. After Shen Yu became emperor, he established a rule that anyone who appeared in front of him must kneel and serve him. After all, if a kneeling person wanted to assassinate, their actions were not as convenient as standing. The Grand Attendant lowered his eyes and whispered, "If I were to return to your majesty, Lord Li did indeed do so." Interesting, interesting. It seems that the dog I have is getting crazier and crazier. Shen Yu stopped writing and looked at the word, kiss, he wrote with satisfaction. After thinking for a moment, Shen Yu ordered someone to bring Li Tian and Li Xiaolang into the palace early tomorrow morning. The dog went crazy and was not afraid, so he tightened the rope around his neck. The next morning in the morning, Shen Yu yawned and sat on the dragon chair with a golden sword, casually glancing at the kneeling civil and military officials, his gaze fixed on Li Xiaoji, who was kneeling at the forefront. Li Xiaoji felt Shen Yu's gaze and imitated his original form, remaining motionless until Shen Yu called out his name before looking up. "Li Qing, come forward now," Shen Yu said, waving to Li Xiaoji. Li Xiaoji immediately knelt down and walked under the imperial platform, about to adjust her posture, when she heard Shen Yu say, "Come up, let me take a closer look at you." Li Xiaoji hesitated for a moment, but still followed Shen Yu's instructions and climbed to his feet, looking up slightly. Shen Yu leaned forward and stared at the clear slap mark on Li Xiaoji's face. He chuckled lightly and said, "Did you get hurt yesterday?" "Returning to your majesty's words, I trust your majesty's blessings." "I have not been injured," Li Xiaoji arched his hand and said. Shen Yu raised his eyebrows, sat upright, scanned the reactions of civil and military officials, and raised his voice, saying, "I should have heard about yesterday's incident. Do you have anything to say?" The crowd fell silent for a moment, cleverly choosing to smile in response, unwittingly observing the faces of others, and of course, there were also idiots who were eager to show their faces in front of the Holy One. Someone jumped out to participate in Li Xiaoji's book, stating that the appearance of assassins not only harms Li Xiaoji personally, but also provokes the dignity of the emperor by such rebels. Therefore, Li Xiaoji should hand over his life to the Ministry of Justice for disposal, rather than abusing lynching on his own. If he asks anything, it's okay, I'm afraid he might kill a group of people like last time. In the end, the person said meaningfully, although there is truth beneath the torture, when Mr. Li comes back to capturing and killing a living person, it looks like cutting off a clue no matter what. Li Xiaoji looked at the speaker, who was Jian Yushi, who had climbed up by flattering his beard and horse. He was one of the enemies of his original body, but he never took the other person seriously. Facing Li Xiaoji's gaze, Jian Yushi couldn't conceal his anger in his eyes. "Pooh, why can Li Xiaoji, who is also someone who flatters the Holy One, always be overlooked while being favored by the Holy One alone? This time, we must seize the opportunity to weaken Li Xiaoji's power. Once we break through the gap, the situation waiting for Li Xiaoji will be irreversible." Zhaozuiyuan.com. Thinking about it, Jian Yushi casually glanced at Li Xiaoji, with a hint of contempt in it. Li Xiaoji ignored Jian Yushi's provocation and obediently knelt down in his original position. Shen Yu took the opportunity to touch Li Xiaoji's head, glanced at Jian Yushi, and with just one glance, made the other person pale. Shen Yu whispered, "Jian Qing's words are really getting more and more. Go back and wash your mouth, don't just do nothing and fart all day." In an instant, Jian Yushi's body trembled uncontrollably as he fell to the ground. However, his dissatisfaction grew stronger and stronger in his heart. What's good about Li Xiaoji? His Majesty is protecting him like eyeballs. Would it be better to arrest and kill people, just blindly being barbaric? After teaching Jian Yushi a lesson, Shen Yu said gently to Li Xiaoji, "Li Qing is frightened. He should rest for a while and then go back to drink tea to rest." "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your kindness." Li Xiaoji was ordered to step down, with an excited expression on his face, but his heart became wary because he knew what was waiting for him next. With Jian Yushi leading the way, the civil and military officials tacitly skipped the topic of Li Xiaoji's assassination, and no one mentioned his smashing of his deceased father's tablet. After the morning court ended, Shen Yu strode away, and the officials who had been kneeling for a long time stood up and went back to their respective homes. In the side hall next to the imperial palace, Li Xiaoji had drunk a pot of tea and was about to pinch a dim sum when Shen Yu came. Seeing this, Li Xiaoji had to give up and kneel down to salute. Shen Yu gave a weak hand and gestured for Li Xiaoji to stand and speak, but Li Xiaoji only stood still. Shen Yu then ordered someone to bring Li Tian and Li Xiaomo. However, in just one night, Li Tian became even more haggard. At first glance, it is not an exaggeration to say that she is a 60-year-old woman, but even in front of the emperor, her waist and back are always straight. Chapter 6. Li Xiaolang, 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Li Xiaomo's eyes were red and swollen, and perhaps the successive scares had left her somewhat confused. She only knew how to tightly grasp her mother's sleeve without any reaction. Upon seeing this, the grand attendant quickly spoke up to remind the mother and daughter to kneel down and bow. Li Tian remained motionless and glanced at Li Xiaoji. When he saw the slap mark on his face, his heart ached and was instantly replaced by anger. Li Xiaoji now holds a high position of power, with healing medicine readily available. However, he appears with this appearance, all he wants to do is to gain attention and put pressure on her. Li Xiaoji stared at Li Tian's face, his hand hidden in his sleeve unconsciously clenching. Seeing that she still had no intention of bowing to Shen Yu, he took a step forward and scolded, "Bold, how dare you be impolite in front of your majesty?" During the conversation, Li Xiaoji glanced at Li Xiaomo with a hint of meaning. Li Tian's eyebrows furrowed slightly, indicating that she was still leading her daughter to bow, but kneeling down was impossible. Shen Yu didn't care about Li Tian's attitude. All he wanted to see was Li Xiaoji's reaction. He smiled happily at the pain hidden in Li Xiaoji's eyes. "Li Qing, I have heard that you and your mother have been very unhappy. As you have been loyal and devoted to serving you, I will give you a favor today. Are you happy?" "Thank you, your majesty, for your kindness." Li Xiaoji knelt down again and saluted. Shen Yu waved his hand and said, "There are some new things in the imperial garden. Why don't we have Li Qing and his family accompany me to enjoy them?" "Oh, our family doesn't have any overnight grudges. We can just walk and chat and have nothing to do." Li Tian was very eager to resist and refuse to cooperate with the traitors and her good son in acting, but seeing her daughter's pale face, she could only endure it. At this moment, Li Xiaoji's eyes suddenly turned black, his throat slightly itchy, and the toxicity was about to erupt. However, he could only endure the discomfort, and when his eyes regained clarity, he cleverly blocked the Li Tian mother and daughter behind him while walking. How could Shen Yu not know about Li Xiaoji's small actions, but the other party's performance was what he was satisfied with. Even if it led to the public destruction of the deceased father's memorial tablet, he still cared about his mother and sister. It's good to care. Next, Shen Yu didn't say anything more. It seemed that he really just wanted the Li family to accompany him in admiring and playing with the flowers. Unfortunately, no one else appreciated the beauty of the blooming flowers in front of him. Li Tian's mother and daughter were absent-minded, while Li Xiaoji tightly gripped her palms, each step agonizing. Perhaps sensing something was wrong with Li Xiaoji, Shen Yu finally stopped, picked a just-bloomed flower, prepared to send someone to escort Li Tian and Li Xiaomo out of the palace, and casually asked about Li Xiaomo's age. "Are you 11 years old?" Shen Yu, who received the answer, felt a bit regretful. She thought it had been a long time, and the little doll that was once nestled in Li Or's arms is still a little doll today. When Shen Yu asked Li Xiaomo, Li Tian, who had already tightened her back, became even more nervous at the moment. What was he going to do? Shen Yu was too lazy to pay attention to the Li Tian family. He was almost 50 years old now, and no matter how absurd it was, he couldn't take action on a little doll. Moreover, he had no son, and his only daughter had passed away 2 years ago. There were several nephews from his own family who were of a suitable age. Thinking of this, Shen Yu looked at Li Xiaolang, who had already begun to look beautiful, and said, "Girl, how about I choose a little prince for you?" Li Tian and Li Xiaolang are the appearances selected by Shen Yu. When stealing the country, Shen Yu used iron and blood methods, killing a whole group of people with fear. After ascending the throne, he should show his kindness to give the people a sigh of relief and facilitate governance. Coincidentally, Li Xiaoji appeared to sell him well, and he didn't care about the other person's true purpose, just treating him as a dog kept by his side. When teasing Li Xiaoji like a pet, it was similar to teasing that tough guy Li Or, but it also dispelled the anger that Shen Yu had experienced with Li Or back then. Li may have gained considerable prestige in the northern region. Although the Li family's army was severely weakened, they still had a foundation. Keeping these 3 people was like holding hostages, and the northern region dared not act recklessly. This is not enough, we have to resort to marriage to break the Li family's last thought, and Li Xiaolang is a very good chess piece. Li Tian couldn't hear Shen Yu's plan and couldn't help but panic. Li Xiaoji suddenly reached out and pulled Li Xiaolang to her side, forcefully squeezing her wrist and crying. Accompanied by the little girl's crying, Li Xiaoji smiled and said, "My sister-in-law is young and immature. She doesn't know how important she is. She often cries and cries, fearing to disappoint your Majesty's beauty. It's better not to wait for 2 years. I have heard that the Qingxin Temple in the west of the city is the best place to cultivate people's minds and conduct. Therefore, I dare to request your Majesty's grace to send my younger sister to the temple for meditation and self-cultivation. So average, in the future, when my younger sister inherits your Majesty's beauty again, her character and appearance will match." Shen Yu squinted his eyes, and Li Xiaoji took advantage of the situation and knelt down with Li Xiaolang. Li Tian watched this scene, feeling complex. After all, his daughter's future was important, so he also bowed and bowed. For a long time, Li Xiaoji and Li Xiaolang, whose legs were numb from kneeling, heard Shen Yu smile and said, "Since that's the case, it has fulfilled Li Qing's love for younger sisters. Someone, please send Mrs. Li and the others away. The matter of Qingxin Temple will be arranged by Li Qing." As the words fell, Li Xiaoji breathed a sigh of relief and watched as Li Tian and Li Xiaolang left. At the moment when the mother and daughter got into the carriage to pick them up, Li Tian's eyes turned red. Li Xiaolang sucked her nose, reached out her hand, and showed Li Tian her wrist, which had been pinched blue by Li Xiaoji. She whispered, "Mom, brother hurts me, I understand. Don't worry, mother. My daughter will stay obediently in the temple and pray for you and your brother." Li Tian just hugged his daughter and went to the academy www.zhaozuiyuan.com without wanting to talk. His son said that he did all these things for the family to live well, but what is good? If I had known today, I should have killed a pair of children without hesitation and hanged myself. In that way, the family could have reunited earlier, and my son would not have made any mistakes on that day. At that time, she didn't die, but now she's looking for her life again, but she's reluctant to let her daughter die with her. Speaking of which, she resents her son and repeatedly forces him. Isn't she blaming herself for being indecisive back then? Or Lang, Yuan is sorry for you. Thinking of the young man in memory who was full of energy and said he would definitely treat her well, Li Tian couldn't help but shed a line of tears. Li Xiaolang silently reached out to wipe her mother's tears, then gently hugged her. Upon their safe and sound return home, Li Tian and Li Xiaolang received enthusiastic attention from the neighbors. Seeing that they were safe and sound, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But knowing that Li Xiaolang was going to stay at Qingxin Temple for 2 years, everyone couldn't help but change their faces. They didn't know what to say or do, and in the end, they could only look at each other and sigh. In the imperial garden, Li Xiaoji, whose face became increasingly pale, could no longer control himself. He knelt down in front of Shen Yu and apologized, "I have offended your majesty with my words and actions. I hope your majesty will forgive me." Shen Yu stood in front of Li Xiaoji, kicked him down, sneered, and said, "You are so bold that you dare not even influence my will." Li Xiaoji got up and wanted to say something, but he spat out a mouthful of black blood and kept coughing. Shen Yu looked at Li Xiaoji's disheveled expression and was somewhat surprised. Has it happened so frequently? Young and robust, but their foundation is so weak. I beg your majesty's mercy and grant me a month's worth of antidote. Li Xiaoji casually wiped the corners of his mouth and looked up at Shen Yu. Chapter 7. Servile and Servile Li Xiaolang, 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Shen Yu didn't say much and casually threw out a small medicine bottle. Don't kill the newly obtained live mouth so quickly, otherwise, I will believe what Jian Yushir said and doubt your purpose. I will strictly comply with your majesty's orders, Li Xiaoji said as he took out a small pill and swallowed it, his face improving at a visible speed. Returning to the Li mansion, Li Xiaoji held his breath and was about to write a letter. However, his heartache and the toxicity erupted again, causing him to roll his eyes in anger and laughter. I am not in a hurry to take the antidote, but carefully feel the changes in my body, holding a pen, biting my teeth, and writing word by word clearly about my feelings during the toxic outbreak. The poison called Lost Heart Dream was developed by Shen Yu himself. Those who take this poison can live and eat as usual before it attacks, and it looks no different from ordinary people. But in the early stages, it will occur every 2 weeks. During the attack, there will be an angina pectoris in the heart, a slight itching in the throat, blood surging upwards, black blood spat out, and the body will feel cold and limbs will ache. The so-called antidote given by Shen Yu cannot completely eradicate toxicity, it can only alleviate it, and it seems that he does not know what the antidote is. As time goes by, the toxicity will become more and more frequent, and the demand for relief drugs for poisoned individuals will also increase, so they can only beg for the mercy of Shen Yu. When the toxicity occurs in the later stage, the pain endured by the poisoned person will be 100 times greater than in the early stage, as if all the bones in their body are being broken one by one. At this moment, Li Xiaoji felt like a big hand was crushing and flattening the bones of his entire body, causing him to sweat in pain. He held up his pen but could no longer write, so he had to give up. The treacherous minister system stood up and looked at his miserable situation, feeling helpless and angry. After a while, he whispered, "You can just use some points. Can we eat you?" "No, no need." Li Xiaoji's voice was almost through his teeth. He could bear it, at least he was also a gold medal employee in the villainous department. "If you don't need points, then take the medicine. Isn't Shen Yu giving you a relief medicine?" The treacherous minister expressed disgust on his lips, but couldn't hide his heartache in his eyes. He grabbed a handkerchief to wipe Li Xiaoji's sweat. Li Xiaoji remained silent and closed her eyes to feel the changes in her body. After recording it later, the clearer she remembered, the better she could identify clues and prepare an antidote. For a long time, Li Xiaoji seemed to have been pulled out of the water, with sweat constantly pouring out. Finally, he was willing to take a pill. As her face gradually improved and her breathing stabilized, Li Xiaoji took the handkerchief from the hands of the Grand Consort system and wiped her face fiercely. At the moment when his gaze returned to clarity, he looked at the medicine bottle in his hand and remembered the plot related to his original body, which made Li Xiaoji couldn't help but sigh, "Power is enchanting." The Grand Consort system looked at him like that, understanding that he had recovered and was about to retreat to his sea of consciousness. When it sensed something, it reminded him, the male lead's mother also had a seizure. Li Xiaoji raised her eyebrows and didn't care much. She took off her coat and recorded her feelings in detail on paper. The treacherous minister was speechless and had to quietly bring clean clothes to set aside. At the same time, Qin Shi's mother, Empress Gao Yingran of the Kingdom of Li, was struggling in pain in the cold palace. Even though she is no longer in her prime, she still retains her beauty. At this moment, she has no more demeanor to speak of, as fierce as a madwoman, with an ugly appearance. The palace attendants responsible for serving Gao Yingran seemed to be unable to see her pain, observing her nose, and heart one by one, allowing her to toss and roll. It wasn't until Gao Yingran shouted, "I was wrong, I was really wrong," that a palace maid came forward and handed her a pill to help her take. Then, holding a cup of warm water, Gao Yingran huddled in the corner, her eyes dazed, her breathing disordered, and she could only regulate her breathing by drinking water in small sips. When Xinyu received the news to see Gao Yingran, she still couldn't calm down. Looking at the pitiful state of the woman who once disregarded human life, Xinyu smiled. At the moment when Gao Yingran saw her, Xinyu laughed even more happily. Gao Yingran understood what Xinyu was laughing at and said weakly, "What exactly do you want?" Xinyu did not answer her and instructed the palace attendants to take care of her, not allowing her to die, but also not allowing her to live freely before turning around and leaving. As he walked out of the cold palace, Xinyu suddenly turned back and thought to himself, "I want you to be as miserable as my wife. Only then will you know how painful I was at that time. I'm in such pain." Li Xiaoji put down his brush and prepared to get up to change clothes, but his foot softened and he fell, calling him a foul language. The treacherous minister system wanted to roll his eyes and help Li Xiaoji up, but before he could take action, Li Xiaoji got up on his own. Drying her body and changing clothes, Li Xiaoji picked up the written content, opened the mechanism hidden in the study, and walked into the secret room designed by her original self. The secret room was bare, and at first glance, there was nothing but a bookshelf. However, Li Xiaoji, who controlled the plot, knew that the books on the bookshelf contained the universe. In fact, Ginchen never forgot the hatred of national destruction and family downfall. He always remembered his surname and name. On the day of the downfall of the state of Li, his father Li, in order to defend the last line of defense and help members of the royal family escape, fought with the main force of the Li family until the last moment, exhausted and died. All the main members of the Li family's army died in battle, including the young and strong members of the Li family. In the end, the Li family only had one male member left, who was the original body. In order to protect the bloodline of the Li family, Li Tian gave up the idea of sacrificing his life for the country and his love. He fled with his original identity and Li Xiaomo from Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. After several twists and turns, he was still captured alive by Xinyu's people. After realizing that Xinyu was trying to make a show of them, in order to seek revenge and protect the lives of his mother and younger sister, he was willing to betray his dignity and pretended to surrender. Niu Yanmei flattered the rebellious officials and thieves. Privately, he did his best to leak out some unfavorable news to the old officials of the state of Li, with the intention of reminding them scattered everywhere to be cautious and one day reclaim the territory of the state of Li. The reason why I am willing to take the poison given by Xinyu is twofold. Firstly, to gain more trust, secondly, to treat myself as a medicine man and try to give the antidote to Gao Yingran, who was trapped in the cold palace, in order to relieve the worries of the old ministers of the state of Li. It can be said that at that time, the young original body was completely sincere and not an ordinary madman, not caring about using any means to stand firm. Any old minister of the state of Li who fell into his hands and could not be saved was killed by him. As Jian Yushi guessed, his original intention was to silence the enemy and avoid digging deeper, which would ruin the last hope of the state of Li. If he followed the plan he had initially envisioned, he would be officially recognized on the day of his restoration, and everyone would know that he had not fallen into the lineage of the Li family. However, people's hearts are constantly changing. Over time, the original body nurtured by power gradually developed a sense of dissent. They didn't want to make wedding dresses for others and wanted to emulate Xinyu and become emperor themselves. At the beginning of the story, the original body removes a hidden stake buried by Qin Shi in the imperial city, slaughters Ah Wu, and makes the decision to usurp the throne, cutting off his past self completely. Coincidentally, a loophole emerged, causing the original body to see the future and resenting his destined failure. He decisively took action, causing chaos in the world. If it were Li Xiaoji, he would naturally have to follow the route set by his original body at the beginning, but due to the lives of innocent people such as Ah Wu, Li Xiaoji did not intend to fall into a cliché and have a tragic ending. Chapter 8. Servile and Servile Li Xiaolang, 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. In private, the original body had always cherished the jade pendant that his father Li had given him, but at the moment he decided to usurp the throne, he smashed the jade pendant. After rummaging through the bookshelf, Li Xiaoji picked up a remaining piece of jade pendant and rubbed it for a while before deciding to use it for an article. Didn't you say you didn't wash the white? The great consort system jumped out like a handle for Li Xiaoji, gritting its teeth. Yeah, no washing. Li Xiaoji smiled, letting you guess the plot from the beginning. So how else does he play? Just watch it. What I hate the most is when someone says that half of the big treacherous minister's system will die instantly. This bitch, be careful not to pretend to be struck by lightning. After teasing the system of the great treacherous minister, Li Xiaoji packed up his things, sorted out the various symptoms of the poisoning that had been recorded before, and hid them in a different place. Then, Li Xiaoji walked out of the secret room and ordered someone to prepare the necessary things for bathing. He was sweating profusely and had to be washed clean. When leaking news to the former minister of the Li Kingdom, he originally used the identity of Qinyu, symbolizing a clear breeze and bright moon, and his heart was sincere. When his original self was not yet blinded by power, he truly devoted himself to the country of Li and never wavered. And through his own means, he roughly guessed the identity of the person who was hiding behind the scenes to gather the scattered old officials of the state of Li. But in order to better protect the hope of the state of Li, Genshin never intended to have contact with Qin Shi, knowing nothing was the most suitable state for them. As the forces of Qin Shi and Lu Yuaning gradually infiltrated the imperial city, out of curiosity about Qinyu, the two consciously searched for information about each other. They want to figure out who the person who has been secretly helping the old tribe of Li is. Due to the excellent concealment of the original body and incorrect information, Qin Shi thought that Qinyu was a rather influential nanny trapped in the palace. Lu Yuaning guessed that the other party was an attendant who could personally serve Xinyu. Otherwise, how can she explain the accuracy of those messages? Both of them never imagined that the person who leaked the information privately would be the Li family young man who had committed numerous crimes. When Genshin realized that Qin Shi and Lu Yuaning were approaching the imperial city and tried to identify him, he decisively cleared the traces of Ying to avoid too much interaction between the two sides. It is convenient for Li Xiaoji to use this relationship to deduce a reasonable plot from it. As for how the original body revealed some key trends of Igua, he found a group of beggars and used them as intermediaries. At the beginning, the message was transmitted as far as possible through carrier pigeons that were not fixed in location or time. Later, for the sake of safety, relying on the strategies taught by Li or the original body made corresponding changes. Careful monitoring often starts with the target's food and drink, but it is easy to overlook the golden object, which is the night fragrance. So, after gaining a certain degree of power from their original position, they selected a few reliable people from that group of beggars and stuffed them into different places, specifically responsible for pouring the night incense. The barrel of night fragrance contains mechanisms. Once outside the city, you can open the mechanisms and place the letters under the marked tree. As time goes by, someone will naturally spread the letters. When the original body changed its appearance and contacted these beggars, it always presented money and information together. The beggars used the money to do things and ran away after completing them, making it difficult for people to track their movements. Even the original body found it difficult to keep track of their movements. But in the end, Shen Yu was suspicious and had to be cautious in his original actions. He rarely transmitted messages, and even so, the male and female protagonists had trust in the Qingyue whom they had never met before. Otherwise, after the original ambition grows, it will not be so easy to grasp the male and female leads. Shaking her head, Li Xiaoji, dressed in refreshing clothes, waved away a group of people and entered the study again, intending to reveal the patrol situation of the North City Gate to Qin Shi as Qingyue. The North Gate guard is just getting by, without a strong sense of responsibility, and particularly fond of beauty. It would be a good choice to start from him. Moreover, while the northern city's patrol may seem strict, there is actually room for exploration, as long as one masters the internal rules of the patrol. After writing the secret letter and hiding it in a layer of brocade, Li Xiaoji called the clever self-slapping attendant. He-san. And rewarded him with some silver coins. He-san has family members doing miscellaneous tasks in the palace. Although they may only do some menial work, they are often more likely to ensure the flow of information. With the reward given by Li Xiaoji, He-san couldn't help but thank himself for his intelligence. He could earn so much money by slapping his face a few times. With this, his aunt and others could also feel better. Don't forget to deliver this to the old place, Li Xiaoji said, handing the brocade bag containing gold particles to He-san. He-san nodded repeatedly and put away his brocade bag. Being able to serve his original body for so long, his most outstanding feature was to ask what to do without asking too much. On the North Gate, Meng, who was on the brink of death, had hallucinations. At one moment, he saw the scene of Li Xiaoji being beheaded, and at the other moment, he saw the tragic scene of Qin Shi and others being defeated, causing him to breathe quickly and find it difficult to stabilize. If it weren't for his lack of strength, Meng would have bitten his tongue and committed suicide at the moment he was hung up. As soon as he died, his brother's thoughts would have been shattered. In a daze, Meng seemed to have seen Li Xiaoji's carriage and couldn't help but squint his eyes to see more carefully at the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com. However, he remained vague and had to curse in his heart that there was no place to bury the dog thief. He must be cursing me. Li Xiaoji walked out of the carriage and looked up at Meng, confidently speaking to the treacherous minister system nestled in the sea of consciousness. The treacherous minister system nodded, probably cursing exceptionally dirty. Seeing Li Xiaoji coming, although the soldiers at the North Gate were annoyed, they still showed their rightful attitude and respectfully welcomed him over. Watch these 2 days, not to mention people, not even a fly has been seen. Perhaps this time we will still waste a living. There are only a few people who know that there are tigers on the mountain and tend to travel towards the Tiger Mountain. Waste. Li Xiaoji chuckled lightly and walked to the city gate. He lowered his head and glanced at Meng, whose consciousness was already blurred, and ordered someone to pour a basin of ice water into it. Upon hearing this, the general guarding the North Gate hesitated and said, "Sir, this person can't withstand any more turmoil. If there is a mistake, wouldn't it be? It's okay, if you die, you'll die. If you're alive, you can stimulate those rebels and make them feel helpless watching their brothers suffer in the hands of the enemy. It's enough to make them uncomfortable." Li Xiaoji spoke, with a smile on his eyebrows and eyes that made the North Gate guard shiver. He dared not persuade him again and ordered someone to bring a basin of ice water over. With a loud crash, Meng, who was cold from head to toe, woke up completely. Just as he was about to shout out, Li Xiaoji's voice came from above, "Isn't it that he hasn't died? Thank you for being careful one by one." Meng had to tightly shut his mouth, unwilling to show too much ugliness in front of Li Xiaoji. The pain could be endured, but dignity could not be lost. Li Xiaoji didn't come to appreciate Meng's embarrassment either. He instructed the North Gate guard to pour a basin of ice water on Jing Meng every other hour, and then turned around without any hesitation to leave.